Hey people! This is Kiyo Kusigani bringing you a no-death run of Gradius, also known as Nemesis outside of Japan and brought to you by Konami in 1985. With a little bit of commentary to make things spicier, but also to highlight the strategies I used throughout the game so onlookers and newcomers aren't intimidated by the formidable adversaries they'd be facing. If you'd like to see a raw replay without any commentary, feel free to click on the link in the description below and enjoy the show. Otherwise, strap yourselves in and get ready to blast off to new worlds of high-flying fun. I don't think this game needs an introduction to any of the older gamers out there that played this when it was brand spanking new, but there's plenty of younger gamers out there that could be interested in what we deemed cool when we were growing up. That, and I firmly believe that any good game is worth playing no matter what your age is. So let it be known that Gradius was an absolute quarter muncher, but it is the best kind of quarter muncher. One that's possible to play for hours, provided the player doesn't make too many mistakes. All because the game gives you all the tools and resources necessary to power through any obstacle it puts in your way, with some leniency to freestyle every once in a while too. Separating Gradius from many of its competitors and imposters, including its own prequel, Scramble. The power-up bar might as well be as iconic as the music blaring in the background at the moment, because it is the de facto triumph of game design that defined the series in gaming history, paving the way for skill trees, weapon variations, and many other things in action games that you can name off the top of your head. You know hell's about to break loose when things go silent as the game gears up for a boss battle. And these active volcanoes tend to trip up most newcomers because it's the first rare instance of having to straight up memorize something in order to survive it. But it's implemented for a good reason. This is placed right after the easiest area in the game to test your knowledge of the power-up system, because being able to bombard these rocks with missiles prevents half of them from being able to reach your ship in the first place. Thus, that first area was a subtle tutorial for the entire rest of the game, and it doesn't feel like a tutorial at all. Excellent game design, especially in an era where tutorials were extremely uncommon. Leading us right into Area 2 after a brief intermission. We're entering an asteroid belt with destructible rocks as far as the eye can see, taking a bullet per pebble. Using our prior knowledge of the game, laser's a preferable weapon if you are indecisive in the first level or ended up dying at some point down the line and needed to recover. This is the first time your choice of weapon makes a serious difference in how well you're able to perform despite your reflexes and intuition. Since laser isn't a single projectile, it just plows through entire rows of rocks, making it much easier to give yourself some room to dodge enemy fire. And this, my good friends, on top of the exceptionally good presentation for a 1985 game, is what separates Gradius from something like Galaga or Xevious. I can't imagine how forgotten this game would have been if it weren't for the power-up bar, because graphics alone do not make a good game. They just make the best games even better. In contrast to the stage needing brain power, the ambush at the end of this area boils down to your skill, because who knows where those board cubes are going to spawn in to try and assimilate them. Moments like these ensure that you don't get a free ride every single time you go through the grind, and you're still keeping your eyes open. I like it when games have some amount of randomness to them so you can't lame it out all the time, and that's what makes a good game to me. But everyone's personal tastes are going to be different. And I'll make sure to establish that if I ever review a game like R-Type or Image Fight in the future. Zipping straight into Area 3, I provide more examples as to how the power-up bar was influential in my review of this game, which I've also linked in the description below. You'd better believe there were numerous Gradius rip-offs out there in the wild, like Slap Fight during the height of its popularity, because once someone comes up with a game-changing idea, nothing's ever going to be the same again in a game's genre. I didn't award grades to the games I reviewed when I first started producing more detailed videos, because I felt like the audience could have formed their own opinions on the games. But since you actually like that for clarification on what I felt about the games that I play, this game definitely would have received the coveted S rank out of me if I had to award it a grade. Getting back to the matter at hand, Stage 3 is when the game starts getting weird, with these Easter Island Moai heads vomiting their Dunkin' Donuts breakfasts back out at you without any table manners whatsoever. Both weapons are suitable for giving them a mouthful, seeing as the double shot lets you destroy the ones above you easier, while the laser does a better job at destroying the sonic rings they spit out at you. It's really all a matter of settling on which one you prefer, although I personally equipped laser so I have an easier time dealing with the boss of this area. These pods fire chunky metal bullets that deflect regular shots, but that doesn't stop the laser from penetrating them and hitting their mark, increasing your chances of survival by not having to deal with some of the foes at all. If you're playing along and you manage to make it all the way to Area 4, take some time to pat yourself on the back, because you're doing pretty well if you made it all the way to the halfway point. During the interlude to Stage 4, try to switch to the double shot as soon as possible. I can't emphasize that enough. This planet might be identical to the first area, but you'll be assaulted ferociously from enemy generators and bullet spammers on the floor and the ceiling. The boss area also has enemy generators in it that you can only reach with the double shot, making it doubly important to try and keep your power-ups in this stage. I consider it the second hardest stage in the game for good reason. You really don't want to die here. That extra bit of pressure makes an already hard stage that more intimidating. But if you manage to get this far already, you will prevail if you take a few deep breaths and keep your cool, remembering a few sneaky tricks along the way to make some sections a lot easier than they look. Like this upside-down volcano. There's a gaping hole between the tip of the background and the spot where the game spawns the bullets, just big enough for you to squeeze through and bypass it hassle-free. That wasn't an intentional strategy since it looks a little bit glitchy, but in a game like this, you should be grateful for any advantage you can get, just like in real life. I presume the trick was well known since Konami acknowledged it in the PC Engine port 6 years later, where you're rewarded with a secret stage for flying into the safe spot. This is where the double really comes in handy. Don't waste any time destroying those pods, and don't give them any chance to release enemies. When they start getting shots off, it becomes way harder to destroy those generators. Dying here is almost a death sentence in the original Japanese version, but we'll talk more about that later. Stage 5, and the going isn't as rough as it was a stage ago, with an area that's not as daunting as the one you just conquered. Provided you gather up all those power-ups to replace the double with laser. The lower rate of fire isn't going to do you any favors on what you'll be facing next. These floating meatballs out of a can of SpaghettiOs are trying to shove Chef Boyardee down your throat. And we can't have that since our spaceship is made out of cardboard. These enemies are as bullet spongy as they look, and that's why you either want the regular shot or the laser. Even if you're aiming for their weak point and not damaging directly, it's still way easier to hit the weak spot by using shot or laser because you can fire at them far more frequently. The diagonal nature of the double shot doesn't make it easy to hit your mark in this instance. Remember how I said dying on the Stage 4 boss checkpoint was almost guaranteed game over in the original Japanese version? I'm gonna shift gears to talk about that for a bit. The regional differences in this game are not insignificant. You may have noticed I'm playing the international version of the game and not the original Japanese ROM set. Nemesis is an interesting rebalancing of Gradius. Currencies used in arcades outside of Japan were not as high in value as a 100 yen coin at the time. So everywhere outside of Japan, the game was made quite a bit harder with faster enemies and faster bullet speeds. But at the same time, the more unfair aspects of the game were ironed out and the title screen was completely overhauled so it featured artwork instead of being a bland black screen. The Stage 4 boss checkpoint only lasts half the amount of time it does in the Japanese version, making the US version of the game harder overall, but fairer. so you're not stuck in checkpoint hell if you make a mistake. You could consider this an early example of a video game patch, long before the internet made that process easy or trivial. The US version of the game is also the only version of the game that allows you to continue up to 3 times. And you can tell it was implemented at the last second. The text actually causes graphical glitches if it's drawn on top of any scenery in the background. Meanwhile, we've made it up to stage 5, and this is where the goopy alien guts get in your way good. The scenery's a tad unusual from this point forward, and these are often the most creative parts of a sci-fi game. With alien landscapes, you can take something familiar, like the tubes in a human body, and twist them to make a bizarre landscape out of them. Anything's possible with fantasy planets. So 3 cheers to the weirdos that illustrated one of the best stages in this game by far. Just in time for the boss, too. I prefer using the double for this stage, but in reality, both weapons are good enough to mess all those walls up. This boss requires an option or 2 more than anything else, so you can reliably destroy these bullets being spammed out of those arms. But if you manage to get in here with a double shot and at least 3 options, you can take advantage of the bullet spamming and reach a huge score profit that'll put you ahead 60,000 points if you avoid shooting dead center. Leading us to the final and most difficult chapter of our little space voyage, invading the Bacterion Mother Base. This stage is absolutely grueling, and in order to even get anywhere at all, you had to have learned everything the game needed to teach you prior to the climax, and more advanced shield manipulation than you've been doing up until this point. If your frontal shield is at less than full power, you might want to deliberately ram it into a wall to diminish it and get a fresh one if your power-up meter is close to the shield to keep it as healthy as possible. You could use this technique in other areas of the game too, but with how cramped the corridors can be in this base, you'll be more thankful than ever you recharged here more than anywhere else. As for what weapon you want to use, both weapons are okay, but I have a better survival rate using the double shot here because of the halfway point having enemy generators on the ceiling. Moving your options behind your ship strategically is far more important than your choice of weapon here. In fact, that is the entire reason why these pods are called options in the Japanese version. They're there for you to place wherever you need them if you know where enemies spawn, or to protect yourself from some of the earlier patterns. What you're seeing on the screen now is a crucial example of both using your shield to protect yourself in an extremely cramped area where dodging is difficult, and good option placement to minimize the damage that the enemy generators do immediately after that. Which brings us to the final checkpoint of the game. If you manage to get past everything before this and you slip up now, it's not such a big deal anymore since it's much easier to recover from this area. Even making it to this checkpoint means you're far more likely to finish the game. The shower stall over here tries to make your run go down the drain by trapping you in an enclosed area, where you can't shoot the enemies. But if you have an option, you can just park yourself above it or below it for another exploit that makes this area much easier. Once you get out of that one alive, quickly destroy one of the tentacles guarding the mastermind and quickly park yourself on the rightmost edge of the screen so nobody peeking over your shoulders laughs at you if you fall for one of the earliest trolls in video game history. You'll square off against the strongest video game boss afterwards with his dreaded stare at you menacingly tactic. And you would have completed one of the most influential games of the 80s. That's Gradius, and that's as great as it gets. Afterwards, you'll get to do it all over again on a higher difficulty level, with fast, ferocious suicide bullets being released out of every other enemy, making it ill-advised to shoot absolutely everything if it's too close to you. In true arcade fashion, this game never ends, but it increases its difficulty 3 more times if you continue to survive. So once you've reached the 4th loop, you can consider yourself to be one of the greatest Gradius players in the world. I hope that my humble little guide was enough to demystify a lot of the skills that I put to use in this amazing game, and it makes it a bit less intimidating for any onlookers with an interest in gaming history. It was cool back then, and it's still cool today. It hasn't aged one bit aside from maybe a few graphical glitches here and there. And if you can, I'd highly recommend getting the Konami Arcade Anniversary Pack if you want to support more Konami's back catalog being available to the public. While Konami is invested in other industries that aren't video games, they are giving gamers a legal way to get all the greatness they created throughout the years, and that should definitely go rewarded. We still gotta see Thunder Cross 2 on Arcade Classics Archives after all. That's where I'm going to sign off for now. I've included the rest of the run in here as a bonus to give you all a glimpse at how difficult this game becomes on later loops, providing a suitable challenge for even experienced players. I hope I'll get the Thunder Cross 2 review out on time this month, since I'm late on this upload as it is, and I apologize for that. Of course, if you like the commentary or it was helpful in some way, feel free to subscribe for more insightful video game reviews and more guides like these. And until next time, stay safe out there and don't get shot by a stray bullet. I'll be seeing you later!